Hello and welcome to another video cigar review from StogieReview.com. I am Walt White and I am here with a pretty new cigar, and it's one that I'm actually pretty excited about. It is probably the first cigar in quite a while that I was really pumped up about and wanted to get my hands on right away. Over the last several months, I've been willing to just kind of lay low and just kind of sit back and wait for the cigars to sort of bob to the surface and become easily attainable. This time around, I made an effort to get my hands on some sort of right out of the gate, and these are the Ortega Serie D. This actually is the number 10. It's available in 5 different sizes. Real quick, number 6, 7, 8, 10, and 12. They are 4.5 by 48, 5 by 46, 5.5 by 50, 6 by 52 Bellicoso, which is the number 10, and a number 12, which is a 5 by 52. Price range anywhere from $35 for a 5-pack to $37, or $60 to $70 for a 10-pack. They also have boxes of 20, 116 up to about 135. Just rough numbers. But the cigar, from what I understand, is made in the My Father factory in Nicaragua, and it is the brand new project from Eddie Ortega. Now, Eddie was really famous for his 601 line, his Cubao, his Murcielago stuff, and a handful of other cigars. Him and Eric Espinosa were a team, and they did really, really well together. And you know, over time, they decided to, I guess, become part of the Rocky Patel empire, and Rocky Patel began distributing all of the EO stuff. And I don't remember whether it was last week, or I'm sorry, a couple of weeks ago, or a lot more than a couple of weeks ago, but I believe it was Jerry, me, maybe Brian, and Charlie sat down to do a YQMA episode, and we talked a little bit about our perception of EO brands now that Eddie Ortega is no longer there. And I don't remember whether it was the episode that we recorded recently, however it hasn't been posted yet, or if it was something we talked about a little while back. But at any rate, we talked a bit about Eddie Ortega branching out and doing his own thing, separating himself from EO brands and becoming Ortega Cigars. And the first cigar to come out in the first quarter of 2012 is the Serie D. Now, when I initially heard, you know, the name Serie D, I wasn't really thrilled with the name. However, I know I've met Eddie Ortega a handful of times. We've hung out at the IPCPR trade show. He's a great guy. I was really eager to try his stuff. However, when I heard Serie D, I thought, you know, maybe this is just kind of a play on the Ortega Serie D kind of a thing. So, you know, I'm kind of, you know, the name is not doing it for me, but I really want to try the cigar anyway. And so the cigars seem to be hitting store shelves over the last couple of weeks, and I reached out to Buckhead Cigar and I ordered a box of 10, really eager to try them. And cigars showed up just a few days ago, and as soon as they arrived, I didn't waste any time. I broke open the box, I smoked one that evening, I smoked another one shortly after, and I smoked another one, I don't know, probably the next day, and we're working on number 4 for the review. And you know, normally sometimes smoking the same cigar over and over and over again in a given week to do these reviews is kind of tedious, but I've been having a lot of fun with these. I'm really impressed, but you know, we'll talk more about that as we move forward. So, about the cigar, it is a Bellicoso shape. It's got a slight square press to it. I'm not sure whether it would be considered a box press or a factory press. It's got some rounded edges, and it's a really dark color. Actually, when I saw pictures of this, I thought, wow, you know, that's a bit too dark to be natural. But seeing them in my hands, they're really dark, but they look fantastic. They've got a light, oily sheen to them, really small, dainty sort of veins. The caps seem to be applied really well. The draw seems to be, it has some variation. I've had a couple that were a little on the stiff side. I had one that was just magical, and this one is a little bit on the loose side. I really don't mind them being loose or sort of moderate, but as soon as there's some stiffness in the draw, I tend to back away. And in this case, we seem to be having a little variation in terms of draw, but they're smoking pretty well. So normally, when I do these reviews, I go through the process of checking the cigar and clipping it and lighting it on camera. But I just kind of wanted to get into the cigar, and I don't have a whole lot of time tonight. So we're just kind of flying by the seat of our pants. I really don't have anything planned for how I'm going to do this review. So let's just hit it. So first puff of the cigar. You pull the smoke in. It's nice and thick. It coats the palate really well. It's heavy. It's got sort of a syrupy kind of texture to it. It makes me think of scotch. If you've ever picked up scotch and swirled it around in the glass, the scotch coats the glass, and then, you know, the liquid stops swirling, and then you see the scotch. It's really heavy, and it sort of drags down the glass, you know, at a really slow, meandering sort of pace. And the texture of the cigar it seems to be very much the same. It lingers on the palate. It spreads itself out. It just kind of hangs out there, and it does a really nice job of just sort of filling the palate with flavor. When you retrohale the smoke, it's like getting punched right between the eyes. I almost feel as though a little too much smoke that time. I almost kind of feel like I want my eyes to water a little bit. But it's like when you're out in public, as a guy, you trip, you pretend it never happened, you just kind of walk it off, and, you know, it's the same thing. I get that urge where I feel like my eyes are going to water, but I just want to muscle through it and just pretend that it never happened and sort of man up. But it's got a really heavy punch through the sinus. It's got some interesting aromas to it. It's kind of woody, it's kind of chocolatey, and it's got, I don't know, sort of like a bitter, musty kind of lingering aroma. Again, all this is through the sinus. On the palate, it's pretty easy going. I mean, I'm getting a bit of a woody flavor, if you can even call it that, and just that's about it. A little bit of bitterness. So it seems kind of watered down on the palate, but when you retrohale the smoke and get it through the sinus, that's where the magic happens. That's where all the aromas and just where all the goodness is in the smoke is when you retrohale that smoke and get it through the sinus passage. As I said, the draw is a little loose, but I'm getting loads and loads of smoke. It's nice and dense. It's easy to move around and get through the sinus. I'm not noticing much in terms of room aroma, and the smoke is just sort of billowing off the cigar. Pretty soon I'm going to have a smoke cloud, you know, drifting down off the ceiling. And this is one of the cigars that I don't think my exhaust fan is going to be able to keep up with, but I'm really enjoying it so far. So like I said, I'm going to be sort of shooting from the hip here. I may be back halfway. I may be back to do a first third kind of a thing. I don't know. We're just going to kind of run with it. So sit tight and I'll be right back. Well, it's been about an hour, and I'm about halfway through my Ortega Cigars Serie D No. 12. It's smoking a little bit faster than I was expecting. I guess that can be attributed to the loose draw, making it smoke a little bit faster, but smoke is just pouring off of this thing. It is incredibly thick in here. I think I may need to crack a window really soon, just because of how smoky and thick it's getting. But all in all, the cigar is going really, really well. From when I initially started the video, which I guess we can call the first third, until about the halfway point, I'm seeing a lot of progression, mostly on the palate. Initially, it was kind of light on the palate, and through the sinus is where all of the flavors really shined. Now it's sort of an equal balance. There's some really interesting aromas through the sinus. I'm still getting kind of like a woody aroma. It still has this sort of dark, bitter kind of aroma, and I know bitter is not an aroma, but I'm having a really difficult time putting a name on the aroma that I'm picking out of this thing, and bitter is the only thing that comes to mind. Across the palate, it's much, much richer and bolder than it was. That thick smoke coats the palate really well, and the flavors of the wrapper just lay on you really heavy. And I'm not generally crazy about this Maduro wrapper. I'm pretty sure it's the San Andreas Maduro, but it just works with this blend, and it's just really impressive. I'm getting some bitterness across the palate, some chocolate-like flavors, and just those really rich Maduro core flavors. It just works for me. I'm highly impressed with this cigar so far. And it's smoking really well too. The ash holds on. I've got a couple of chunks in the ashtray. It looks to hold on about an inch, in which case I'm knocking it off. It seems to be burning fairly well in terms of even goes, or as far as evenness goes. It's a little wavy here and there, but nothing that I felt the urge to correct. You know, it seems to be well within reason. The finish is nice and creamy. Smoke rate is great. I mean, I'm getting loads of just really thick, dense smoke, easy to get through the sinus. Just all in all, a winner in the flavor department. I'm just really impressed. One thing I wanted to make mention, and you'll probably notice it as I'm handling the cigar, is there's a big white bar on the back of the band. And this is actually the first cigar I've ever seen with an imprinted barcode actually on the band itself. These cigars come naked in a box. In my case, it was a box of 10 with a thin piece of cedar as a divider. And, you know, I'm not sure how I feel about that. I mean, from a consumer standpoint, it's kind of gaudy to see that big giant barcode on the back. But from a consumer standpoint, it's got to be a dream to be able to just pick up the cigars and scan them, or not have to generate your own labels and stick them on there. You know, I've gone to a lot of cigar shops where they use a point of sale system, and if they're not using sort of like a 3 or 4 digit code for each cigar, they're making their own barcodes and scanning them. And when you have naked cigars, it's just kind of awkward to have a sticker slapped on the band. No matter how you pick up the cigar, the band, or that sticker kind of sticks to you a little bit. You get that sticky residue on your fingers. Even if you pull the sticker off, the band is still kind of tacky and sticky. But in this case, I mean, it's no problem. It's just kind of ugly to look at. Kind of cool from a retailer standpoint, but definitely different. Well, I'm getting down beyond the band, and cigar's getting a little warm to the touch, a little warm on the palate. And it probably has a lot to do with the fact that this is drawing a bit loose. All of the cigars that I've smoked for this review, or leading up to this review, have all gotten a little bitter and harsh down toward the end. This one's not doing too bad. It's getting a little bitter because it's getting warm, but the cigars seem to just kind of fall off once they get down just a little bit shorter than this. So I wanted to wrap it off while we're still on a high note, because I'm going to anticipate this is going to get a little rough. So in terms of body, this is probably firmly planted in the full spectrum. I mean, it's not Cane or La Flor Dominicana Double Ajero full, but it is a good, solid, full-bodied cigar. This isn't something that I think would be overwhelming earlier on in the day. You know, as long as you have maybe some breakfast in your stomach, you could probably manage this one fairly early without much, you know, nausea or just feeling run down and ill afterwards. It's got a pretty clean finish. I mean, it's thick and it's heavy and it lingers for a little while, but after it leaves the palate, it leaves clean. You know, it doesn't have that, your palate doesn't have that battered and weary sort of feel to it, where once you're done with the cigar, you're kind of done with cigars in general for, you know, a couple of hours or the following day. This one is clean and easy enough that if I wanted to, I could put this one out and light up another one, and, you know, I don't think my palate would be battered even after the second one. So it's got a nice clean profile to it. Flavors are both are the same, more or less, through both the sinus and across the palate. The balance is pretty much the same as it was earlier on, where I'm getting a good mix of flavor both on the palate and through the sinus. Earlier on, it was leaning heavily towards aroma through the sinus, and the flavors were a little watered down on the palate. As we moved further into the cigar, it became more balanced, and in this case, we're pretty much, you know, 50-50. You're getting a good mix. Again, the flavors are pretty much the same. I'm getting a little bit of a bitterness, some nice rich Maduro flavors, a little bit of a chocolate sort of flavor. Just all in all, just really solid flavors across the palate. The aroma through the sinus is very pleasant. It's got a woody sort of aroma, sort of like a dark, bitter, musty sort of a thing going on, and I really like the cigar, you know, all of it. It's just a very, very pleasant stick, and one that I'm highly impressed with. I mean, I was coming into this with high hopes for the cigar being good. I was really excited about it, and you know, I'm sure that added to the way I feel about the cigar when I actually tasted it. But you know, I am really impressed. This is something that I'll definitely be smoking more of in the future. I'm not quite sure who the retailers are at this point. I just checked real quick with our sponsors. None of them seem to be an Ortega Cigars account. However, good friend of ours, Mike over at Buckhead Cigars, carries the Ortega line, and I'm not quite sure how many he's got left. I know that he was going through them really quickly. They seem to be a real hot seller. So if you're interested in trying them, I would suggest checking out Buckhead first, and then if Mike is all out, you know, start putting the feelers out to try, you know, different retailers and see where you can get them. And keep an eye out in your local cigar shops. You never know if and when these things are going to show up. But for the money, I think this is a stellar cigar. For, you know, $35 a 5-pack, I just think it's a winner. It's definitely something that you should try. So that's going to close out the review. I want to thank you for watching another Stogie Review video cigar review. Thank you for downloading, listening, subscribing, you know, however you're digesting the information. And until next time, happy smoking, and I will catch you later.